Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the OnePlus 7 Pro and see how this particular phone holds up in 2024. Now, I will definitely tell you, out of all the phones that came out in the last couple of years, especially majority of the OnePlus phones, the OnePlus 7 Pro is one of those devices that I always just keep coming back to because it is just such a legendary device in so many different ways. Like, it is actually pretty shocking how an amazing of a job, OnePlus did with this particular device. And in this day and age, I still think this phone holds up insanely well in a lot of different ways. And it's kind of hard to, have this phone age out. Like, it's hard for this phone to feel like an old phone, mostly because of its design and because of its build and everything that OnePlus kind of threw at this phone at the time. Now, I do say for the most part, maybe this phone wouldn't be the first phone I'd recommend a majority of people to buy, mostly because this phone's software updates are kind of done. Also, if you want to custom ROM this thing, you can go for it, but for the mass majority of people, they're probably not. So I will leave some other phones, I'll link down in the description. If you want to pick up those ones instead, those are probably going to be better off for the average people, and you can also help support the channel at the same time. So with the outside of the OnePlus 7 Pro, on the front of this phone, you had a 6.67-inch fluid AMOLED display. Now, it was a 1440p panel, and it was a 90Hz panel as well, and it was a really good panel. And, it may have been one of the better panels in 2019, but not only was it a curved glass panel, which I liked a lot, it was a very big panel as well that a lot of people prefer. Me personally, I'm kind of in the middle, but having a big panel is really nice, and that's a really cool advantage of that particular device. But I will tell you, the big thing going on for the OnePlus 7 Pro for the most part was the fact that they did remove that hole punch display. So OnePlus went through, removed that, hole punch display at that time, and that was a really big advantage for that particular phone. The fact that that device was actually giving us that type of build at the time was very cool, and that in and of itself was, again, one of the cooler features and, aspects and advantages of that particular device. Now, on top of that, I will tell you the thing that helped this phone the most, I would say, for the last couple of years was the fact that this thing did actually give you that, pop-up camera at the top. Now, I'm glad they removed this, okay, because it really wouldn't have held up that well. But my OnePlus 7 Pro still works, which is actually pretty crazy. But again, if that's something that you wanted to think about, again, the less moving pieces on a phone, the better. But this phone still had it, which was cool, I guess, in a novelty. But definitely the lack of a hole punch display was pretty crazy in my opinion. Now, on the bottom of this phone, we were getting USB-C, which was really cool. I love having USB-C, and this one had it, as most phones probably do. On the back side, you had the standard glass back, which is very cool. I think that held up really well on this phone too. And then you had a triple camera setup up there. You had, a lot of cool stuff going on for this phone at that time, which was really awesome. And I would say for the most part that, lack of hole punch display, the lack of everything else going on this phone was a very crazy thing at the time. And a lot of phones didn't give you that type of capability. And a lot of phones now still don't have under screen hole punches. They're still on top of the screen. But this one thought of it through at that time, which is genuinely very crazy. But not all is perfect. There are some things that are missing within this phone that other phones are basically giving you, nowadays. And especially, when you consider how old this phone is, kind of makes sense. It's a 5-year-old phone. The OnePlus 7 Pro doesn't have any IP certification, which is actually pretty insane in this day and age. You're also not getting any sort of, wireless charging on this phone either, which can be kind of a big issue. If you're wanting to go through and wirelessly charge a phone, that's a very basic thing to have nowadays. This phone is not giving you that type of stuff either, which again can be kind of a problem. But I would still say for the most part, for a 2019 phone, it's pretty insane that this phone had that type of capability at that time. So with that being said, that kind of covers it up there. From the camera side of things, like I said, this phone is giving you a triple camera setup, which was very nice to have. You were getting a 48 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel telephoto, then a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera. And on the front, you were getting that motorized pop-up 16 megapixel wide angle camera. The problem with this phone, I would say for the most part, is that even back in 2019, a lot of phones were basically giving you pretty decent cameras. Like the Samsung Galaxy S10 and the iPhone 11 Pro both came out in 2019, and those phones had really good cameras. I really like those cameras on those phones. The problem, I would say for the most part, with the iPhone 15, the problem I would say for the most part with the OnePlus 7 Pro, there's a couple of them. One, you are not getting 4K at 60 on the front of this phone. Now, again, at that time in 2019, a lot of phones were giving it to you, the iPhone 11s and the Galaxy S10s. This phone, they were not giving it to you, which kind of was somewhat of a sad thing. And I feel like they should have done something there where they should have actually giving us that type of capability, number one. The other big thing here was that with the OnePlus 7 Pro, the camera itself really wasn't even that great of quality. So I really didn't feel like that camera was that great, and I feel like they really messed up, and they should have done a better job with the type of, camera quality in general at that time too, with the video quality, specifically. I feel like the camera photo quality was decent, but definitely with that video quality, they should have done a better job. And that's just kind of what was happening there for the most part. But overall, I'll still tell you with the OnePlus 7 Pro, definitely not a bad camera, I guess for how old this phone is, but it just really isn't a strong suit, especially when you compare it to, cameras, like other cameras that came out in 2019. So that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the software longevity, like I said before, this phone, actually when it first came out on Oxygen OS, I was a big fan of it. I loved Oxygen OS, and that was something I loved a lot at that time. Unfortunately, with this type of device nowadays, it's kind of already outdated with software, which it's not even like that super outdated, but it didn't, last, it's like 2 or 3 versions of Android behind. But the problem with this phone, I would say for the most part, is that you are kind of getting, an already old device if you're planning on buying this phone. So that can be kind of a problem if you plan on buying this phone, like it's already going to be outdated by the time you get it. But the other problem too with this device is that it's already going to be kind of a device that, unless you're going to custom ROM it, there's just no point in buying it because you're not really getting any more features ahead of it. So that in and of itself is probably going to be another problem. If you already own this phone, that's different. But if you plan on buying a phone, like there's just not that big of a future ahead of it. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pick up this device from that perspective, in my personal opinion. So just kind of keep that in mind. And that's kind of how I think about, from that particular perspective as well. Now, in terms of the performance side, this phone was a little interesting. So you were getting that Snapdragon 855 chipset inside, which was very common in 2019. And you were getting 6 or 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM on this particular device. So that's another kind of funny, interesting thing going on for this particular phone, because, you could just go ahead and buy, another type of device, and get the equivalents of the RAM. But it is pretty crazy that you had that, assortment of RAM that you could choose from, because there are still lots of phones nowadays that have been coming out that will also basically not give you like that same amount of RAM, right? Like I know the Galaxy, S24, that phone has 8 or 12 gigs of RAM. And the fact that this one has that type of capability is actually pretty insane to me. So I will tell you from that particular perspective, if I'm going to go and buy some sort of phone from a performance standpoint, this phone's performance really isn't that bad. And that's something that you have to kind of keep in mind. Like if you are going to go and buy some sort of device, I do like how this thing is giving you that type of capability of it basically being, decent performing device with a 90 Hz panel, which is actually pretty good going on for this particular phone. But like I said, it's not an amazing performing phone anymore either. So if I could just sit here and kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I will definitely tell you is that the OnePlus 7 Pro, I would say for the most part, it's not really a phone I would recommend people to buy anymore. I think this phone was pretty good when it first came out. It was really good. It brought a lot of cool stuff, but it did cut out some things. And I will tell you, it cut out a lot of things that a lot of phones nowadays basically give you, like wireless charging, reverse wireless charging at that, and a lot of other things like IP certification. You're really not getting those things on this particular phone, which could be kind of a problem for some people out there. So take it as you will, but that's kind of the big thing going on for this particular phone as of this point. Not the biggest deal in the world, but that was the one thing that kind of, I guess I would think about with this particular phone if you plan on buying it. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.